Alrighty, so for this week's group concept presentation, I'm going to be talking about how oxygen binds to the heme, and I'm also going to explain the different capacities of oxygen to heme in the lungs and how that differs from the capillaries and so on. So for this, I am having issues with Screenomatic or whatever, which is pretty typical. For some reason it does not get along with, I don't know if it's the browser I'm using, if it's my computer, I don't know. So you're just gonna see me. I apologize that I don't have any pictures or anything. I'm gonna work on that for next week, but it's still just having too many issues with that where it just freezes up and doesn't save the video for me. And so to start off, I just want to talk about that oxygen. The way it works is it is transported from the lungs to the capillaries throughout the rest of your body. And because of this, the pressure of oxygen is a lot higher in your lungs relative to it being much lower in the tissues throughout your body. In the lungs, hemoglobin is saturated with oxygen, and it's around 98% oxygen in your actual lungs because of those binding sites that occupy all of your lungs. Where on the other hand, the rest of your body, in the tissues, capillaries, and all that, the saturation level of oxygen actually drops significantly down to about 32 to 38%. And so that is because it is dropping off the oxygen throughout the body to all of your tissues, to your organs, everything like that. Oxygen, when it binds, it induces a substantial structural change in the iron sites of the hemoglobin, okay? And the binding of oxygen molecules at the site in your body rearranges that electrons within the iron, so that the iron becomes pretty much the iron's really big, and then it changes it so that way the iron becomes relatively small, allowing it to move onto the plane, so it can go in and out. The change taking place in this structure is due to the magnetic properties of hemoglobin, and so that's what's able to make that molecule shrink down a little bit and then be able to go to and from a lot easier. And on oxygen binding, there are substantial changes to the structure that corresponds to that T and R state transition. We kind of talked about that last week, or it might have been this week actually, but the T to R state transition. In the lungs, oxygen binds to heme, and in the capillaries, oxygen, it disassociates from that heme, okay, so it like kind of comes off, and it mixes in the blood down there, okay. And so as for the pH, a decrease in pH shifts the curve towards the right, the standard curve to the right. This occurs because there's a greater hydrogen plus ions concentration, where various amino acid residues, they just, because of those, the decrease in the pH. And the T state has a lower affinity for oxygen than the R state, okay? So remember earlier how we were talking about the T and the R states. So with the increased acidity, the hemoglobin binds less O2 for a given pressure of oxygen. So this would be more hydrogen plus ions. And that's what we call the Bohr effect, which we learned about earlier this week as well. As CO2 is acidic in nature, so when it interacts with the water, then the pH of the capillary actually decreases. And that is what your lungs actually are doing. Your lungs are actually helping balance the pH in your body, because the more CO2 and then more O2, like they need to either excrete more CO2 or keep more CO2 in order to make sure that that pH remains balanced. So I hope that didn't confuse you more. It's difficult without pictures or anything like that. But hopefully that's a generalized overview of how all of that works, the oxygen binding to the heme and everything. I'm looking forward to seeing everybody else's videos, hopefully some with some pictures or diagrams. I'm sure that will be much more helpful. But I'm going to work on that for next week, and we'll see what we can do from there. So hopefully this was helpful, And thank you.